So the Obama administration is flip-flopping again on enforcing federal marijuana regulations. In a 2009 memo, the Department of Justice promised no federal interference with state medical marijuana laws. But in 2011, DOJ issued a new policy promising to prosecute people even if they're complying with state laws legalizing marijuana. In fact, they are doing that in California. But now, Attorney General Eric Holder says DOJ will leave it all up to the states without federal interference. Joining us now to discuss all of this is Dan Riffle. He joins us from the Marijuana Policy Project. He is Director of Federal Policies. Is there a distinction in the new DOJ policy as to recreational marijuana, as they will allow in Colorado and Washington State, and medical marijuana, which I believe is now allowed in 16 different states?
No, there's no distinction between medical marijuana and recreational marijuana in the department's memo. The memo just simply says that what they'll do is take a hands-off approach in those states like Colorado and Washington, which take a clear, safe, regulatory approach to marijuana that put, safeguards in place to prevent marijuana from falling into the hands of kids, to keep criminals and cartels out of the marijuana market. In those states, the Department of Justice is going to take a hands-off approach and leave enforcement up to the states. Does
that mean that the crackdown, we've witnessed the crackdown in California, they've gone after distributors and people who are growing marijuana for medical marijuana distribution and doing it legally under state law but violating federal law. Are they going to back off of those prosecutions now?
Well, part of the problem with California specifically is that their state law is so vague it's hard to determine what's in compliance with state law. So I think now that we have this memo from the department that says we're going to take a hands-off approach only in states that clearly regulate the industry, that puts the onus on the California legislature to regulate their medical marijuana industry.
So in places that Colorado and Washington State, which have passed laws legalizing the recreational use of marijuana, where will they get the marijuana? Does the state law actually govern all aspects of the industry, from growing marijuana to the processing and then delivery of it?
It does. It's really one of the most revolutionary changes in public policy as it relates to drugs in many years. Even in Amsterdam, where people think that marijuana is quote-unquote legal, it's only legal to buy it and use it in the coffee shops there. The coffee shops themselves actually obtain it from the black market. The difference will be in Colorado and Washington, the state will actually license individual farmers to grow marijuana, wholesalers and transporters to distribute marijuana, and retail stores to sell marijuana to adults 21 and over who choose to use marijuana.
Where do we stand nationally in regards to marijuana? Is the day coming, the way people walk into a Starbucks to get a coffee, you might be walking into a store in any one of the 50 states to get a buzz off of a joint?
I think everyone here in Washington, D.C. knows that marijuana prohibition's days are numbered. The policy memo that we saw from the Department of Justice last week was a clear white flag in the federal government's 40-year war on marijuana. The Attorney General, the President, they had the opportunity to decide to block implementation of these laws and chose not to because they know that the majority of the American public no longer supports criminalizing adults for choosing to use a substance less harmful than alcohol. And it also sends a clear signal not just to Washington and Colorado, but to the other 48 states that they too are free to chart their own course on marijuana. And if they don't want to enact more rational, sane policies like taxing and regulating marijuana, taking the revenue out of the cartel's hands, taking the market out of the criminals' hands, and putting that revenue in the hands of licensed, tax-paying, law-abiding businesses, they're free to do so.
Dan Riffle from the Marijuana Policy Project, thank you for joining us on Markets Now.
Thanks for having me.